Hi, everybody. Here's another edition of Beyond Addiction with Gulf Breeze Recovery. And today we are very lucky because we're getting to speak with Greg. Greg, why don't you get a short introduction? Who are you?
I'm Greg. um, I'm a graduate of GBR, and I graduated the first week of December, and um, it was a lifesaver situation for me. Uh, so anyway, I'm here.
Yes, perfect. People will want to know, everybody wants to know what was the substance? What was the thing that got you to have the need for recovery? And I think you just need to talk just a tiny bit louder
Okay,
and will be good. So talk to us about what was the substance that was being abused and what got you to Gulf Breeze. How's that?
okay. Um, I didn't have a challenge while I was working, but it was in December or January of 2020. I got COVID. And during that year, I had COVID a couple of times and had a stroke, and I could no longer work. And at that point, I started drinking out of boredom because I was homebound. I couldn't leave the house because I was on oxygen 24 hours a day. And I started drinking more and more. And in a short period of time, I did probably in one and a half years what it takes most people 30 years to do. I became severely physically addicted to alcohol. And it was, when I say it was bad, uh, I wasn't sure I was going to make it several times and tried a number of times to quit on my own, and I could not do it. Uh, Attempted to get into a treatment program, and my insurance through Medicaid was one of those Medicaid providers, private providers, and nobody would take my insurance. And so I went for almost 2 years, um, really losing all hope. And 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 I need to say this: I didn't before. I didn't when I was working. Really didn't have a challenge, but after I stopped working, um, it was lonely sitting there looking at four walls all the time. And so I drank out of boredom. And then I started drinking out of necessity. If I tried to stop, I would literally shake so bad. If I could have held down liquids, I wouldn't have been able to hold it to get it to my mouth because I was shaking that bad and having the fit and having nausea, dry heaves, and physical withdrawals. I mean, hallucinations as well. And so uh, it was an exciting event. And anyway, it was just alcohol.
Right. And what you're describing is so often what they say at Gulf Breeze Recover that it's an innocent attempt to take care of something and then it just takes care of you. It takes over. And you would mention to me how every time you try, it's like, okay, today will be the day, but it just doesn't work that way, does it?
No, it doesn't. And I knew a lot about addiction. I worked in the mental health field for 45 years. I ran inpatient and outpatient drug and alcohol treatment programs, as well as psychiatric hospitals, inpatient, and I had a private practice in Alabama and Florida. Um, I worked with a lot of people, but and I never thought that I would get caught up in this, but I did, and uh, it's strange. You can wake up in the morning and say, "This is insane. I'm never going to do this again," and then by 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you have justified it within your head, and you're off running again. I'd say things like, "I'm only going to drink one," and I drink one, then I would drink one more one, and then another one. And finally, after 15 or 20 of ones, I'd be very, very anesthetized.
Yeah, I
And
mean, you're speaking to the truth of how you can know the answer doesn't mean you can do it.
I've always said I did not have a drinking problem. I could drink all day long. I had a problem not drinking. And, there have been a lot of books written about alcoholism in particular. There was one many years ago, I mean, from 45, 50 years ago, called I'll Quit Tomorrow by Vernon Johnson. And I, I still, I hear people, when I've said it myself, I'm going to quit tomorrow. Well, then you're going to quit tomorrow again. And I tell people, if you want to quit, this is tomorrow today. So you either keep suffering or make a decision. It's the easiest thing to do once you decide, but it's the hardest thing to do if you leave yourself back doors and excuses to go back to. Um, I hear people talk about all the cravings and giving in to the cravings and the triggers. And I'll be honest with you, I have not struggled with that. But I realized, and especially through GBR, that, you know, we are the captains of our souls and masters of our fate because we have the power to control our thoughts. That doesn't mean that thoughts don't come into your mind that you don't want to be there. I mean, they're going to come in, but when you focus on those, you're feeding them, and they're getting bigger and stronger. And if you want them to go away, you don't give them any food. They'll eventually get shrink and get smaller and die off. And so, uh, I learned how to focus on the now. And when I did that, I learned that if I wasn't worried about the past, which is already done, and not worried about the future, then my mind was a lot more relaxed. And I could actually observe my thought process. And if I saw something coming in, before I grabbed a hold of it instinctively and started feeding it, I'd say, where is this taking me? And once I realized that, then I said, that's not where I want to go today. And so if people understood, this is not a complicated thing, but it's complicated if you make it complicated. And there's difference in deciding that you want to do something and just kind of hoping that it's going to work without you doing anything, just showing up for treatment. Good luck.
Yes. Yeah. You're talking about, I think, what makes Gulf Breeze recovery unique, because they're not. Matter of fact, you can tell me if I'm right or not, but most people I talk to tell me that they very rarely even talk about their substance. What you're really focused in is the core. What is the underlying reason? Where is it, and how do we address it? And that's what is so unique. It's a special thing to actually not just look at the symptom, but look at the cause. Talk about that.
And I would take it even a step further in saying that um, you can understand addiction, you can understand what your causes are and your reasons for drinking while it's kicking your butt every day. So, um, if we learn to control what we focus on, which is what they teach you to do, and there's books, there's all kind of things out there, and I think the books are hugely helpful. They have a great library, um, but I hear people every day say, "Well, I don't like to read. I hate reading," and I said, "Well, if you hate reading, what you need to do is read until you like to read. Then you'll never have to hate reading again." But see, to me, that when you read, you can go back and get a thought over and over again, and till it sinks in. And I know um, most people think. Can I talk about the just real quick the mental concept? most of us are trained to think with our and listen through our ears, and that feeds your conscious mind and your ego, which is basically a summary of your experiences in life that you have decided and your brain has decided are the important ones. They may not be, but that's what they think. So when it hears something and you're listening and learning through the ears, it's sorting out the stuff that comes in. It tosses out anything that's not in line with what it already believes to be the truth and gives you more reinforcement as to why you're right on thinking this and you don't need to listen to anything else. Well, it might just be an illusion to the truth because we have limited experience. I've had people tell me, they said, well, I've known the truth for 30 years. And I say, well, gosh, that's awesome. But I learned many, many years ago that as I get more information and more accurate information, my idea of what the truth is changes with time. So that
That
sounds
that's
oversimplified.
yeah, that's I mean, you're talk a little bit about Gulf Breeze. Like when you went in, did you do detox?
I did.
Let's talk about that because people watching this, some of the biggest hurdles are overcoming the fear of heading into a detox. So talk about how your experience went.
Well, I didn't really have fear of the detox because I'd already gone to the hospital and gotten physically detoxed several times. And they would get me over the shakes, send me home. And even though I was aware that I was never going to go through that again, somehow or another, my car would just magically get pulled into a parking lot of no, you're not going to believe this, but it'd be a liquor store. And even on the way from the hospital, and next thing I knew, I would be drinking again. And but Gulf Breeze, when I came, I I told my family, I said, don't expect to hear from me for 2 months. I'll try to call you every once in a while to give you let you know I'm still alive, but I'm coming to work on me, and I don't want any distractions. And I knew it was not going to be comfortable. I mean, it wasn't comfortable getting into that situation, and it sure wasn't going to be comfortable getting out of it. Now they make it to where it's safe, and you experience nothing of great discomfort. But I mean, it's if you're used to being anesthetized all the time, um, it's still not a pleasant, exciting event. And but so uh, the staff were very nice. Everybody, every staff person I met while I was here was very professional. They were very knowledgeable and very obviously had a very caring about the clientele they were serving. And most people don't realize how valuable that is because I have tried to hire therapists and train them. And what I learned over 40 years is that it was easier to find people that had those qualities and then train them for your system than it is to train somebody how to be truly caring and empathetic and all those other things. And but so the um, the the everything that you need to know is there. But and they teach you the main thing is how to also listen, not through your ears, because that's feeding that conscious mind and ego. Where you're looking for listening is from the heart, which is where you hear the true truth. But you have to be plugged into the right power source to be able to access it. And that's where you get that divine inspiration um, or perspective, whatever you want to call it. And uh, that really makes a difference. And it's stuff that you could not, it's almost hard to explain. That's why most people just discount it and say, oh, that doesn't make any sense. Well, it doesn't make any sense because they never heard of it before. But there's a lot of books been written about it, and it's very well known. I guess psychologists love that kind of stuff. But um, you've got to come in with an open mind and be ready, first off, to admit that you don't have all the answers and that the answers you have may not be correct. And they're going to teach you how to plug in and get those correct answers. But they're not going, they can hand it to you all day long, but you've got to do the work when you get there. I mean, I go through it, and I'm in an aftercare program still. And, I have people come in and say, when are they going to start telling us something different? They tell us this every day in treatment. Well, why the reason they're telling you that every day is because you hadn't learned it yet. And when you go to aftercare, that is your chance to take that information that you were taught and go out and try to apply it. And you come back for aftercare and say, I tried this, but I must have misunderstood something because it didn't work. Or it worked good and you're able to make adjustments. But you can't make adjustments unless you're moving.
Right, right. Now, not all of there's so many different types of therapy at Gulf Breeze Recovery.
Yeah.
And you've got your group stuff and you got your one-on-one and then the recreational, which is some people won't understand how important that is as well. So talk about that. Talk about the different therapies that you went through.
Well, the group therapies, um, I learned probably unbelievable amount from other people that were going through treatment with me because, when we were not in the groups and with the staff, we were sitting around talking about all this stuff and uninhibited and basically being truthful. And you learn a lot from, you can learn things from experience, which is a good teacher, but it's very painful and takes a long time. It's better to learn from somebody else's experience. If you've got your ears open, you can gain a lot of insights from talking to people and getting feedback for yourself. And the individual therapy, all the therapists that I've met are outstanding. I got, um, believe it or not, I had never had therapy in 45 years of being a therapist, and until I got here. So it was kind of like putting on a different hat. So I got to experience the first time I had to learn how to be a patient. And then we also have to have things to do with our free time. Like when I was working, I worked with people all day long, 6 or 7 days a week. When I got home, I wanted to be alone. It was downtime. Um, After I stopped working, I had 24 hours a day of downtime and nobody to talk to. And it was really not good. So, one of the things you get is you get to have contact with other people. We do doing things like arts and crafts. I have some bracelets on right now that I keep on that remind me. But they're fun activities. I wear two bracelets, and one of them is it never out of the fight. And what that means is this: a friend of mine that was a veteran shared that idea with me, and he said that you know if you're a soldier and somebody's threatening to take our freedom in the country, you'll fight them to the end. But now, throughout life, there are also other things that try to steal our personal freedom, like alcohol stole my freedom for a period of years. And I'm not saying something can't whip me temporarily, but you know what? If it plans on beating me, they better bring their lunch and probably pack a dinner too, because it's going to be a good fight. So you learn how to do things that are also fun. We have outings for the people that are doing the work, and do things like go bowling, go to the movies, all kind of different things. Taking walks, hikes, um, things that we forget when we're with our substance. Uh, how to do? There are fun things that you can still do in life. And being sober and doing them is more fun than being drunk and doing them. And you don't have to feel guilty and ashamed about it. And so, um, did I answer that question?
You did, and I think you touched on the biggest lesson there because so many people think they drink for courage. They think, well, I can't possibly have fun without a drink. And then when you do this without it, you realize how much you missed before and how much. I mean, I can remember having to go on a retreat where I couldn't talk for 10 days. And I thought that would be awful. And I found out I liked not talking. So you're finding out on these excursions that you could be a real person and experience things you never thought you could experience, right?
And experience them better than I was before. And actually remember it. But you
That's a
know
big
what?
thing.
It's, you know, the there's a phenomena when, especially with alcohol, that we have something called euphoric recall, and we don't remember all the horrible stuff. We remember the stuff that was good and what attracted to us to start with, but that goes away after before long because after you get to the addiction point, uh, it is not fun, and as a matter of fact, it's just misery. And only one person can unlock us and get us out of that misery. That's ourselves. And but you have to have the keys. But to get the keys, you got to pay attention and listen, take notes, read, even if you don't like to read. Read until you like to read, and and get around people and listen to them and talk to them. And I know that that was difficult for me at first. Like I was very confident in my profession with talking to people. But in my personal life, I'm an extremely shy person still to this day. Um, Heck, I didn't even talk to myself till I was 21. And so initially, it also loosened me up and I made it feel like I was braver. But the crazy thing is, if I drank, the more I drank, the more withdrawn I became instead of
Yeah,
talking.
that's too bad. That was such a waste. Now you talked about. I know the food is also very good because
Uh,
they work on your whole body, your mind, and now the food.
the food is second to none. I'm talking about steaks, salmon steaks, uh, everything is like going to a five-star restaurant every meal. Um, it'll spoil you. And you learn a lot about nutrition and why they're giving you this good food because you have to have all the food groups in order to really recover. Your body just doesn't recover in 2 days, and it takes feeding the right stuff into. If you fed water and garbage down the my gas tank of your car, eventually it would stop running. And and most of us, like when I was drinking, a lot of times I didn't drink, I didn't eat at all because it would mess up a good buzz. And so I would drink, and then finally I wasn't hungry anymore, and which would make the addiction worse. But and some of you probably know what I'm talking about. But it's uh, the food here is so good. The biggest problem is uh, to you don't have to eat two and three servings, but it's
Very.
hard because it is really that good.
Now, one of the things I want to highlight a little bit because somebody listening to this might want to read a book, and there's so many terrific books. If you wanted to mention like one or two that, or three of you, it doesn't matter, no limit. But what are the ones that impacted you as you went through this process?
A lot of them did, but one particular author, Joe Bailey, was really influential for me. I read the first book was called Serenity, and I just really I loved his writing, and it made so much sense. I read that book two or three times, and then I went back in there and found there was a whole bunch of books by him, and Um, uh, Surviving the Eye of the Hurricane is a great book. But one that really impacted me was called um, the what is it about the fear? Um,
The fear factor,
the
yes.
fear factor, yeah. And it explains how to get access to that heart knowledge that I talked about, wisdom. And it even tells you in chapter 6, it goes into every detail of exactly how to do it and the obstacles you're going to run up against when you start trying to do it. And I mean, everything is there, but it also, he very much clearly points out that it has to take a priority in you that you say, this is important enough that I'm going to learn this. And I mean, I still, even though I've been out of GBR since December, as soon as I got out, I bought that book. And I immediately opened to chapter 6, and I decided that I was going to learn that chapter 6 as well or better than Joe Bailey because it was divinely inspired. And I mean, if you got the best wisdom that you could get in the world, why wouldn't you want to learn it well? So I study it every day, morning, noon, and night. And I probably I, I could probably give Joe a challenge on what I know about that chapter. But I love all his books. I also liked Eckhart Tolle's books. Um, what is it about the New Earth and um, the Power of Now? Um, there's so many in there. I don't have my list in front of me, but I literally I read a ton of books while I was here, and every time I read one, I would make notes of over there so that I could remember them, so I could go back and get on Amazon and order them. And um, there's one that I hadn't been able to find on Amazon. I got to find out how to get a hold of that one. I can't remember what it was right now. But anyway, there's a lot of books, but there's just so much knowledge in those books that if you're not reading them, you're missing it. And it
Right.
doesn't
And
matter
you
if you're
can
alone.
you have nice quiet hour. You can take the book out and sit on the deck and watch the fish. I mean, it's a very the time that you can spend with yourself is very important.
And we also have at GBR, there's a class after lunch, um, certain days of the week that you just go into this big area off to yourself and you read. And then for about 30 or 40 minutes, and then you come back as a group and discuss what you read. And so you all may be reading a different book, so you're learning also what other people are getting from those books, which give you thoughts about, okay, maybe that's a book I want to pick up next. Um, the information is all there, but you have to make the decision that you're going to get that information and learn it.
And receive it. Yes. Now, did you do any of the modalities? Like, did you do neurofeedback
I
or
did.
yeah? Talk about that.
Um, I wasn't sure what to think about it when I first started because I didn't know much about it. Um, but what it does is over a period of time, your different parts of your brain don't, they stop firing in the right sequence. And what this does is it basically wires your connections back right. So it's kind of like um, uh, in an engine, you know, the points and the plugs, they have to be adjusted to fire just right so that not things are not running rough. Well, we have to do that with our brains sometimes, and especially, um, you know, I joke about it. I drank so much alcohol for about 4 years. I tell people when I came here, I told them, I said, look, I'm down to two living brain cells, and one of them been waving bye bye to the other one. I said, so I said, you better be careful with it. Don't hurt that one. But we, you will be amazed at how much clearer your thinking gets in a very short period of time. Uh, After you start eating right, sleeping actually, because I never could sleep before I got here. I mean, I would go for days without being able to fall asleep, and especially even drinking, I couldn't fall asleep. And uh, I don't know how I made it. It was not fun.
No, it isn't fun, is it? No,
No,
no.
it's not.
So we did the books. We talked about the therapy. Talk about what happens as an alumni that can keep you in this program. What do you do now that you've graduated?
Well, there were several things I did, and I actually started some of them before I graduated. Um, I go to a center every day that's like I'm a older spring chicken. I mean, I'm 72. I can't believe it. I think they made a mistake on my birth certificate. But so I qualify to go to these senior citizen centers that people that are not working. So I go and I spend my days down there, and uh, I get physical therapy because I'm still recovering from my stroke, even though I can walk and drive and do everything. Uh, you know, I was homebound for 3 years. You lose a lot of muscle
Mm.
mass, and I was also told I'd be on oxygen forever, and I don't have to have a walker. I don't need any help. I don't have oxygen anymore. But it does help me to get that physical therapy every day. And then we have classes like we did at GBR with the arts and crafts and movies and outings uh, and just be able to be around people and just socialize. And so, but uh, when when I got out, so I had started doing some of those things before I got here because I knew I needed them. But then they're also they offer a intensive outpatient on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday from 5:30 to 8:30, and it's not it's voluntary, but uh, I don't know about you, but if I invested a couple of months into getting all that information, it all comes together in that aftercare intensive outpatient program because that's where you go out in the world and start trying to apply the things that you learned. And if you're having success with it, you share that. But if you're struggling with some of it, you share that. Then the other people that are in the group and the instructors help you work through and come up with a plan of how maybe there was just one little piece that you missed and they kind of help you with that so you can go back out to the next between then and the next meeting and practice it and fine tune it. And so um, uh, there's some people I've watched people come in and they'll say, "Well, I've already got it all. I don't need anything like that." And I've watched some of those people, and maybe it'll hit the next time. But I came in here to learn and get recovery, and and I knew it was going to take some effort and some priority in my life. And so I don't miss any of those meetings. Uh, I'm sitting here talking to you right now, and at 5:30, I'm going to be from 5:30 to 8:30. I'm going to be in my aftercare intensive outpatient program.
Perfect.
And I and I
Perfect.
and it's I like this. This is kind of like my home base. I kind of it just sort of feels good to come back. If that makes sense.
It does. It does. What was it like when you got home?
Um, well, I live by myself. I live in the country on a farm. So it was the only difference was that I didn't have any alcohol in the house, and I really and truly haven't had to struggle with um, cravings or triggers for whatever. And the reason is the stuff that I learned. I learned that thoughts are going to come into your mind on different things. But whatever you focus those on, if you focus on those thoughts, that is giving those thoughts food, and they will grow bigger and stronger. And if you don't like those, then you can't make them disappear, but you can just not pay attention to them and focus your attention on something else. And then once you start becoming aware of your thoughts before they get full bloom, you can say, I think that one's fixing to take me in a place I really don't want. Unless you really enjoy feeling anger, jealousy, pain, suffering, hopeless, all those bad feelings. I like feeling joy, happiness, passion. I mean, those are. I have another bracelet: joy, love, and passion. Um, just a reminder to myself.
Right.
So, see, I'm telling you those things. I'm really just reminding myself.
Perfect. Yeah, the book that did it for me in that library that may help me understand what you're talking about is The Untethered Soul. That book where did you read that one? Because he talks about if those thoughts, those little thoughts, the person that sits on your shoulder and tells you you're not worth it or you're not good enough or all that. And in that book, he says if somebody was sitting next to you saying that, you'd move away.
Right. You wouldn't sit there and let them just keep dumping that stuff on you.
So why do you hold on to those? And that's what you're explaining. You just need to let it come in and out. Go.
Well, and as simple as this sounds, and I ask for guidance on things that I don't understand because there's some things I just know I don't have the answer for. And so what I do is, I said, why does it seem to be so hard for people to understand? And it occurred to me, it's like if you have an electric heater, it works great if you plug it into an electrical socket, but it doesn't work very good just sitting on the floor and not plugged into anything. It's got to have a power source. When you listen through your heart, it sounds crazy because it's not something you're used to hearing. But the books and the classes and all teach you how to listen with your heart. Joe Bailey does a great job of it, especially that fear factor thing book. And um, if you follow those, you know, that thought occurred to me when I was asked, why is it that we have such a hard time hearing this? And it just came to me. It's because we're trying to plug it into the wall. It's the wrong power source. And you have to get that through uh, calm, quiet mind, not overloading your mind with conscious thought, because then it's almost like getting a busy signal when you're looking for answers. And and being open to hear something and not have prejudge and decide what you're supposed to hear before you hear it. And realize just that I don't know all the answers. If you do that, this is you'll go back and say, why didn't somebody tell me about this a long time ago?
Yeah, and it's interesting because it does take work and it does take effort,
Practice.
but so does staying drunk. You got to find the stuff, you got to afford the stuff, you got to think about when you're going to get it next, where how am I going to do this, how am I going to do that, how am I going to hide it? So now you're just doing work on how you're going to be well.
It's harder to stay addicted than it is to get sobriety, whatever your drug is. And I think that's what puts people off and makes them suffer for so long is because they they think, okay, look what I'm giving up. And then they realize that they weren't giving up anything. They were gaining something really special. Um, I went through the holidays this year for the first time sober in 4 or 5 years. And I forgot how nice it was to go through the holidays. Um, I didn't, didn't wake up feeling bad, feeling remorse, uh, feeling guilty, feeling ashamed. Um, I avoided people because of the fact that I was ashamed. I didn't want them to know. I wanted them to know what was going on with me, and I thought I was covering it up. But then after I got sober, I realized that they all knew I was the only one that thought I was getting away with something.
It's so true. You have so much to share, and I really have appreciated hearing it. But I'd like to know, what do you want to make sure the person watching this video or listening to this video hears from you? What do you want to make sure they take away most from this conversation?
Um, First off, you can do it, and it doesn't have to be 10 times to try to do it. If you decide, don't sit there and say, "Okay, I'm going to do it tomorrow." Remember, it is tomorrow today, and uh, decide that you're going to go get the information. And I was afraid to miss a class or not read a book because I was afraid I would miss out on something important. And I also knew that we all have perfect memory. I bet you didn't know that, but we do. It is a fact. You have a perfect memory. You just have lousy recall, and the mind is like a giant filing cabinet. So everything that you are exposed to is in a file somewhere in there. But if you had a big filing cabinet the size of a house, and every time you got a new piece of information, which is tons of it every day, you just threw it in the door, yes, it would be there. But when you went to go get it, to retrieve it and review it, you'd get very discouraged in a hurry, having to dig through mounds of information. So you have the only way to do that where you can access it is by repetition of thoughts. And if you don't know what the thought is, you can't do repetition of thoughts. That's why I love reading and taking notes, because I can go back and go over it enough times that I can imprint it in my brain. And so I have things like Joe Bailey's books. I even have files in my brain on books like Serenity. There were so many things in there I wanted to remember. I didn't want to put a new file folder for each one of them, so I have one called Serenity. That was Joe Bailey, and so um, I can go back and just pull that up in my mind and pull out what I need. I'm not going through that giant mound of information. I know these things sound simple, but what I'm trying to tell you is that it is simple, but it's not as easy because you've got to decide to make an effort that this is a priority for you if you want it to work. You don't have to do that. And eventually you'll get to where I was. It was, for me, it was either continue drinking and probably die within the year or get sober and live. Because I got to where I was having physical problems like internal bleeding from alcohol use. Um, I fell out one time and got taken to the hospital, and they said, "Oh, your blood low count's super low." And when they checked me, I needed 6 units of blood. You only have 9 in your body. They said they couldn't believe I was still walking. They said if I hadn't have passed out and got to the hospital, I would be dead because I would have bled out. Because they are able to identify where I was bleeding and cauterize it and stop it. Um, that was self-imposed harming myself without even knowing it. And so I had a number of motivations. Plus, I didn't want my family to go and look back and remember me as a drunk. And they had not seen me that way until I blew it and lost my vision and my benchmark. I told you about benchmarks, right? So um, I know this. It's there. You can do it, and it's worth it. But come in and decide. I'm going to not only sit in there and warm a chair, but I'm going to do it for me, not for my family that anybody tried to push you and make you come. Do it for yourself and decide that you're going to get what is out there. If you come through this program and you don't learn what you need, then it's because you didn't try. Because I'm going to tell you, I know a lot about treatment programs, and this is the best. And I speak not just from a personal opinion. I speak from experience. Uh, this is an awesome program, and they gave me everything I needed, but they exposed me to it. I took advantage of it from day one. I didn't wait for weeks and months to get started. I came in from day one and said, if it's out there, I'm going to get it.
Perfect. Perfect, Greg. Thanks so much for your time.
You're
That
welcome.
was just right. I'm going to stop.